Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It's June the 2nd, 2025. Let's talk 168 pounds. Let's talk Jermall Charlo against Thomas Cornflake LaManna. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Folks, 168 right now is unsettled. Number one, they're having a problem finding a date and a time for the Canelo Crawford fight for undisputed in the weight class. Now, assuming that someone wins that fight, assuming that it's not controversial and they end up in a rematch, right, folks? Think about 168 for a moment. You have two guys who are highly thought of, who are very front foot heavy, right? Edgar Berlanga, who is in a tough fight against Hamza Shiraz. You also have Christian and Billy, right? These are guys who, try to hunt you down, two-hand attacks, a lot of KOs. Right? Berlanga, open question on whether he can make weight. Right? Now understand, into that environment, an environment with Mbili being unbeaten, Berlanga only having lost to Canelo, in a weight class where, if you distinguish yourself, you actually have a shot against Canelo. You have unbeaten. Today, he's unbeaten. Jermall Charlo, Jermall with an A, returning to the sport against Cornflake LaManna. Now, let me say this. Let's keep this as real as possible. LaManna is defensively challenged. Right? He's a guy who gets hit with shots. He's a showman. He was taunting Charlo even after getting dropped multiple times. Right? He's a showman. He's courageous. The bottom line is he was getting hit with shots. Charlo was landing power shots with both hands. Charlo showed, at a minimum, after a lengthy layoff, that he can still punch. Right? He showed, at a minimum, that he could back you up. He could have you guessing on which punch he's going to throw. I'm not saying that this version of Jermall Charlo is prime Jermall Charlo, but that's what is going to make him so appealing to opponents. Right? What I want people to do, too, is to look at 168 closely. A lot hangs in the balance. Benavidez still wants Canelo. Who doesn't? Right? Berlanga, who lost to Canelo, wants him. Jaime Munguia is dealing with a positive drug test on his A sample. He's taken himself a little bit out of the mix. In the background, you have Diego Pacheco. Now understand, Diego Pacheco might be too long for a lot of guys in the building, including Canelo, including Terence Crawford, including Mbili, including Berlanga. Right? Let me say this. I personally would love to see Canelo fight Hamza Shiraz. Right? The public is down on Shiraz because they have certain feelings about, in my opinion, the second half of the Carlos Adames fight. Right? I don't know how anyone can watch the first half and not give Shiraz at least 4 rounds. I understand many people out there feel I'm a homer. Folks, you win the first round, you've won a round. Right? That first round should count as much as the 12th round, especially if you didn't hit the canvas in either round. right? But that's not how fans see it. Um, let's just say Shiraz would give Canelo problems. What exactly does Canelo do if he becomes undisputed a second time? Well, he actually did against William Skull. If you believe the outcome of that fight, William Skull wants a rematch with Canelo. He feels he won that first fight. Let's agree. Canelo had a hard time reaching him at times in that fight. So into this uncertain environment. By the way, Janabek wants a shot on Canelo, the 160-pound champion, right? Has a belt, so does Carlos Adames at 160, right? I feel Canelo would have an awfully hard time against Chris Eubank. There were a lot of names. Folks, Jermall Charlo is an unbeaten fighter. He hits hard, at a minimum. At a minimum. He has a chance at landing hard shots against most, as long as there isn't a distance game being played. Right? I'll say this too. You look at some of the guys, I have no idea how Diego Pacheco makes 168 pounds. If I'm Canelo, why wouldn't I want to fight Benavidez next? Can Benavidez even lose weight to get back to 168? If he did, wouldn't you be fighting a ghost? It's not that Benavidez moves that well as it is. A hungry Benavidez might not even move as well as he does now. Right? So, all of that said, Jermall Charlo actually has a runway ahead of him if he still has the talent. Now we understand. He's had problems outside the ring. Guess what, folks? Boxers are people like the rest of us. Right? I mean, that's the reality. Right? Let me also say, too, lay people think that if they get a windfall, get some big payday, all the problems in life would be solved. Right, folks? For many, all the problems in life are just beginning. Right? You and your girl had no money. It was just the two of you in a semi-cold apartment. You had popcorn there. Orville Redenbacher popcorn, whatever your brand. You were, watching cheap cable, maybe Freevee or whatever, right? And you thought to yourself, man, could it possibly get better than this? Right? There wasn't even talk about a budget because there wasn't anything to spend toward the budget, right? You understood, hey, why don't we prioritize the rent? Why don't we find a way to pay the utility bill, to keep the electricity on? Right? You're going through your phone and you're thinking, man, what streaming services should we cut? Right? You're at the grocery store and, the two of you understand, hey, let's stay away from the steak department. Right? We don't need to get tempted. Ground beef will do. Right? Then, of course, you get some money in your pocket. Suddenly, people want things. You, her, right? Suddenly that apartment, which might as well have been the Taj Mahal, is inadequate. Right? Suddenly, relatives are coming out the woodwork. People you went to high school with are telling you that, they need money for kids' surgery and stuff like that. Suddenly you're a big man on campus. You think that position is something you want when you have nothing going for you. I'm just telling you, it's not anything you want ever. Right? You really want to be able to know that your girl's with you because the two of you have chemistry. You want to know your friends are rolling with you just because you're good company. They're good company. Right? You don't want to feel that people are hanging with you because you're their private bank. right? They want to start a business. It's amazing how many people want to start businesses, isn't it? Well, let's just say Jermall Charlo, champion, unbeaten, reached a point where he was questioning it all, right? You are a boxer. You understand it's a long shot type thing. Then it hits, right? You're not the only superstar in the family. That sibling relationship can have a positive dynamic, can have a challenging dynamic at times. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying, right? So let's just say he's lived a life. He's still standing. Now he's looking around him, and guess what, folks? Like Manny Pacquiao has spotted 147 and has said to himself, man, at 46, I might be able to walk right down the Champs Elysees. I might be able to pull a Napoleon here, and you know, uh, you know, a General Sherman here, and just go through the South, right? Well, let me just say, just highlights from the fight. Um, I thought it was really interesting because Jermall Charlo wanted to fight Caleb Plant. Right? Caleb Plant seemed to do his best Josh Taylor impersonation in fading in the second half. Right? The guy, Resendez, who beat Caleb Plant, looks beatable to me. Right? He's too much in front of Plant, isn't he? Plant just didn't have the stamina in the later rounds. Right? Also, for years, we've been here online saying, hey, Plant looks like a one-handed fighter. Right? His best hand is his left hand. You remember he hit Anthony Durrell with a double left hook to take him out. Right? His right hand always looked shaky. Well, now he's talking about how his right hand was injured. He claims for this fight. Right, folks? This fight didn't look that much different than other fights. Right? Let me tell you, you never find out what's really going on with boxers until after their careers are over. Right? That's when you find out that, Joe Frazier was blind in one eye. Something's always been going on with Caleb Plant's right hand. Right here, he could have used it. He got beaten. So Charlo now might actually be forced, and it's interesting, might actually be forced to consider fighting an Edgar Berlanga, fighting a Christian and Billy, right? Fighting some of the other guys in the division. Let me say this too. If Canelo beats Crawford, and Canelo wants a payday against a name that has a resume, Jermall Charlo, in my opinion, would be on the short list. Right? That would be a combustible fight. Canelo would be a huge upgrade over Thomas LaManna. Right? Canelo, after fighting Crawford, might think to himself, hey, I want an easy fight. I've just dealt with an unbeaten Crawford. 5 years from now, people are going to look at my resume. They're going to see that I fought unbeaten guys. Why don't I add to that by fighting Jermall Charlo, right? His name will be mentioned, I'm sure, in a bunch of talks to get leverage, whatever the real agenda. You never know the real agenda until the contract's signed. Right? But just understand, Jermall Charlo has come back at the perfect time. If Crawford beats Canelo, Crawford had some prime things to say about Jermall Charlo's brother, Jermall Charlo. It's clear that Jermall Charlo and Crawford aren't, real close friends. Right? So just understand, if Crawford beats Canelo, then of course he could pivot. Imagine the promotion. If Crawford decides to stay at 168, I think Crawford knows a Diego Pacheco would be too difficult. Right? One man's opinion. I know that line's a loaded line. I think Crawford knows a Hamza Shiraz would be difficult. I think Crawford probably beats Berlanga. right? Although that fight would be touch and go, right? But if Crawford were to face Hitman, Jermall Charlo, whoa, that's quite a promotion, isn't it? Right? Crawford would have a lot of smack he could talk. Could you imagine Ali beating a guy who beat Hitman's brother and then showing up at press conferences for a fight against Hitman? Right? We're already hearing that Ray Leonard, if you believe the folklore, said to Floyd Mayweather in reference to Ray's victory over Floyd Sr. Ray supposedly told Mayweather Jr., like father, like son, right? Leonard wanted Floyd to know, hey, I think I beat you, right? You can imagine the smack talk that Crawford could throw down if he beats Canelo. Then he's at a press conference and Jermall Charlo shows up at the press conference to support his brother. Right? This is kind of like Jake Paul and his brother. You can imagine Crawford could look at Jermall Charlo, former undisputed at 154, and could have choice words, right? Crawford might be setting up future fights. That would look good on paper, right? Might not be that great a fight in reality, but they could sell it to the public as undisputed against former undisputed if Crawford were to call out Jermall Charlo and beat Jermall Charlo, right? So Jermall Charlo is in the mix, folks. He hits hard. He hits hard with both hands, right? Don't get me wrong. You saw the rust. He looked a little slow by his own standards. Now that could be temporary. Could be a guy shaking off the rust. It could be being 35. He's been out of the ring for a while, right? Again, Father Time waits for no man, right? You're out of the ring. It's not like, you're not getting older every day, right? I'm intrigued, given the disarray that 168 is, right? Given the fact that there are several guys who believe they could be king, right? The winner of Berlanga against Hamza Shiraz, I don't believe they would hesitate to fight the winner of Canelo against Terence Crawford, right? Diego Pacheco, the only thing that might stop Diego Pacheco is his own body. To be that tall and to weigh 168, that's not going to last as he gets older, right? But for now, who's going to get through Diego Pacheco's reach? You tell me, right? Then, of course, if the bullets start flying, Diego Pacheco has a punch, doesn't he? I mean, I saw a fight where I was hoping it would go one more round because I had the over, and Pacheco took the guy out on a body shot. Right? So 168, you need to circle. This is not a situation like Cruiser, where you look left, there's Jay Opatay. You look right, there's Gilberto Ramirez, and you think to yourself, okay, sooner or later, this division is going to be decided either by one of these guys moving on from the division, right? And keep in mind, Ramirez has already beaten Chris Billum Smith, right? And Joe Smith, right? And Goulamarian, right? It's either going to be decided by one guy leaving the division to the other, right? And realistically, Ramirez himself has admitted he weighs, several more pounds when he's not fighting. Right? But you know who the top is. Right? You don't at 168. Right? Canelo's been, fighting guys like Jaime Munguia and Berlanga when both are a bit green. Right? You understand that a KG vet, whether that's Jermall Charlo, whose name needs to be mentioned in the mix, whether that's now the winner of Berlanga Shiraz, whether that's Christian and Billy, you understand that there's a legitimate line of contenders who have no doubt in their minds that they can beat the winner of Canelo Crawford, especially after Canelo's performance against William Skull, who has to be considered one of the threats to the throne. Charlo looked much better than I thought he would. The fight didn't go that long. We didn't get the opportunity to see his level of fitness in the later rounds. There's no Josh Taylor, no Caleb Plant part of this fight. Right? Charlo takes care of business, gets knockdowns early, then is able to follow through and get the stoppage. Right? That shouldn't convince anyone watching this video that if pushed to the later rounds, an inactive Charlo might not have shown even more ring rust. Right? All of that said, folks, he hits hard with both hands. He's a KG vet. He knew exactly how to counter LaManna. LaManna did have lateral movement, but you understood. Sooner or later, he was going to come in the pocket. He didn't have the length dynamic. He didn't have the feints. He didn't have anything to keep a vet like Charlo guessing. Right? Charlo was able to hit him. Charlo was able to follow him around the ring. It would be a lot harder against a Diego Pacheco, against a Hamza Shiraz. Right? Understand, too, there'd be more firepower coming back against a Christian and Billy, against an Edgar Berlanga. Right? Let's all keep an eye on 168. It looks unified. Right? Crawford and Canelo are fighting for all the belts. I would argue that both guys, whoever wins that fight, would face big, stiff competition if they decide to continue on at 168. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. I have the highlights of the fight in my favorites folder here on YouTube. I hope you give it a look. Thanks for stopping by.